summits have focused on visions of countries for the Indo-Pacific, and we are very excited to hear the next speaker's vision also for the Indo-Pacific, and of course also India's position in the New World Order and his overall geopolitical views as well. He's someone who, of course, is no stranger to India. We've enjoyed very good ties with Australia under his leadership. I am, of course, talking about the 28th Prime Minister of Australia, who we are extremely privileged and honored to have with us in our midst today. Yes, our next guest of honor keynote address is by none other than Honorable Tony J. Abbott. As I said, the 28th Prime Minister of Australia. We also will be having a very interesting Q&A for him later. But first, over to you, Prime Minister Abbott, for your keynote address. We're really excited for it.
Well, thank you. It's been a fascinating day, but a long one. I won't keep you too much longer, but I do hope to give you something to talk about over dinner. I do think that events like this matter because they bring leaders and thinkers together from different perspectives, and that's vital because the world, as Stephen Harper reminded us this morning, is more fraught than in many years. The Ukraine war might soon end with Russian aggression rewarded. The Gaza war could soon peter out with Hamas, the terrorist group, intact. And China, as India is only too well aware, is constantly ratcheting up its belligerence, particularly against practically independent, free and democratic Taiwan. China, Russia, Iran, communist, militarist, Islamist dictatorships are in an alliance of convenience against free countries that have rarely been as divided and confused. Quite apart from the massive loss of life, the ramifications of the Ukraine war have included much higher global energy prices and food shortages, in a warning of how quickly even the best of times can change under leaders more set on world power than their people's well-being. Leadership matters, and here India's leadership has delivered the world's fastest economic growth, with rural India finally enjoying clean water, proper sanitation, reliable electricity and connectivity, while urban India is gaining mass transit systems, motorways, and an economic takeoff that's more soundly based than China's, thanks to democratic legitimacy and government under the rule of law. But the question I want to address is the one posed earlier to Prime Minister Harper. Is the Trump ascendancy going to do more good than harm? No new president has had more impact in his opening few weeks. Domestically, he's reversed the so-called green transition and stopped the policy preoccupation with climate change. He's ended the woke fixations of American boardrooms, including hiring practices based on immutable characteristics rather than character and talent. He's declared there's only two genders. He's tasked the world's greatest industrialist with making government more efficient. And he's ended the chaos in America's borders via the shock and awe tactic of threatening a 25% tariff unless Mexico in particular militarises its border to stop the daily inflow of thousands of undocumented foreigners and drug precursors. Well, so much, so good. But along the way, he's mocked the Prime Minister of Canada. He's mused about turning Gaza into a Miami beachfront. He said that the most beautiful word is tariff, threatening to upend the freer movement of goods, people and ideas that until recently had made the world more safe, more rich, more fair and more free for more people than ever before in history. And most worryingly, he's accused the Ukrainian president of being a dictator who started a war in order to ride an American gravy train, pending a deal to give the US preemptive rights over Ukraine's strategic minerals. Only now to walk that back, suggesting that this president should always be taken seriously, but not always literally. So what's happened to Ronald Reagan's idea of America as a shining city on a hill and the last best hope of mankind, and to JFK's America that was ready to pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend and oppose any foe to assure the survival and success of liberty? Has it been replaced by fascination for powerful leaders disposed to bully their own citizens and invade their neighbours? Or is it simply a presidential desire to understand the difference between strength and weakness? My sense, and that's all it can be until more plays out, is that this president is shaking things up rather than changing his country's direction, because America's fundamental values and interests have not changed, not one bit. Tariffs, at least on friendly countries, don't protect industries so much as punish consumers. And the same common values, common interests, and yes, the same common anxieties that created the Quad are still there. President Trump is no less a patriotic believer in America's manifest destiny to be a beacon to the world's poor, huddled masses yearning to be free, no less an enthusiast for the power of market freedom to drive national wealth and personal opportunity, and no less committed to helping to build a more peaceful world where people can realise their dreams. It's just that where Kennedy saw American troops and advisers overseas as adding to his country's moral lustre, he worries that they could drag America into other people's wars. And where Reagan saw America's big fight as against the Soviet evil empire, this president sees the main struggle as against China's economic ascendancy based on exploiting free trade without practicing it. But so far, his verbal joustings have prompted a previously quasi-pacifist UK Labor government to lift military spending sharply and promise to police any ceasefire in Ukraine, and Middle Eastern governments that have long tolerated a terrorist statelet to consider how Gaza might be rebuilt other than as a sanctuary for apocalyptic Islamism. And even India has started to reduce its tariffs in order to make PM Modi's recent visit there a resounding success. It's hard to see a deal done behind Zelensky's back, if only because no president would want history to brand him the appeaser who'd sold out Ukraine to Russia the way Chamberlain sold out Czechoslovakia to Nazi Germany, or a deal with Xi over Taiwan, if only because no one determined to put America first would give its chief rival control of the sophisticated microchips essential to AI to power the next economic revolution. Countries' relationships with America will be more obviously transactional under this president, with less woolly rhetoric and more practical outcomes. Countries that want America's help should do more to help themselves and be more ready to give America a bigger stake in their freedom too. And if that means fewer restrictions on US investment and fewer green hurdles on economic development that China, for instance, can usually bribe its way around, then that's likely to leave the free world much better off. As J.D. Vance, the Vice President, recently warned, many democracies have been rolling back free speech in the guise of countering so-called misinformation or avoiding giving offence. To reduce emissions, we've damaged our competitiveness and deindustrialised. To atone for the old racism and sexism, we've started to discriminate again, only this time over identity. We've even started to deny democracy itself, excluding from government parties that take the wrong voters' concerns seriously. So as the antidote to military weakness, economic stagnation and cultural confusion, Donald Trump might not be the president the world likes, but he may very well be the President the world needs. Yes, as someone with a long memory and a mean streak, as the President himself admits in one of his books, it might be rhetorically brutal, at least in the short term. But the longer-term outcome of this presidency should be less of the self-destructive politics of climate and identity, and ultimately freer trade between like-minded democracies, plus stronger American allies. And this, of course, brings me to democratic India. Wonderful democratic India that's assimilated the rule of law and that now has the prospect of replacing China as the workshop of the world and becoming the supply chain partner that free countries can trust. When Prime Minister, a decade back, I used to call India the world's emerging democratic superpower. Under Modi, it has well and truly emerged as the world's second democratic superpower, and by God, don't we need another democratic superpower, and any unpredictability from the first will provide a great opening for the second. I'm confident that this will be the Indo-Pacific century. I hope that it turns out to be more India's century than China's century, and I believe that this is more likely if there is no American opt-out of all the world's struggles. God bless you, God bless India, and let's work together for a better world.
Thank you so much, Tony Abbott.